first of all, why is the APC the party of choice to vote for in 2023? If you're going to say the first thing in summary to convince the listeners to say, give us your vote.
I would say execution capacity and demonstrated track record of delivery. That's why you would choose that. That's what differentiates this particular candidates from the rest of the group. And I think when we talk about track record of delivery, nobody understands or has articulated some of the policies that you would like to see to move Nigeria forward. So, for example, one of the major points in that manifesto is the ambition to grow the GDP by double digits. And at the same time, the candidate has stated his minimum acceptable GDP growth rate is 6%, and that's intentional. Because if our population growth rate is around 3%, you need to double that, your GDP growth rate, in order to continue to create opportunities for more and more Nigerians and move people out of poverty. So it's a pro-business, pro-poor agenda. I think the other reason that you would want to vote for them is the major issue of insecurity. They've articulated a very detailed plan around how they would create an enabling environment, not only with regards to general insecurity in the country, but with particular issues around infrastructure and crude theft in the oil and gas sector, which is a catalytic sector.
We've got massive amount of oil being stolen out of our waters, and you just be amazed at, with the amount of investment put in this and how important it is also for us in Nigeria. So for the Tinubu Shettima team, what would be done differently? In terms of both moving us away from being too oil dependent, because every nation is moving fast from this, and also to focus on reducing the theft. Of the oil that we have that we should be selling.
No, thanks for saying that. And you're right. It is a critical issue and needs to be addressed urgently. And the Tinubu Shettima team have already outlined some of the issues. They're all very tied to the wider national security problems.
Right.
So making sure, like I said, you invest in the digital infrastructure that's required, the physical infrastructure that is required, because some of those assets are old. And also making sure that you have better intelligence and you equip, and there's definitely to your point around seems to be happening under the noses of people. There's a hearts and mind campaign as well that needs to occur here to make sure that people feel invested in the whole and not just the self. And whether you're part of the security forces or in those communities, or whether you are an investor, that you look out for the whole of Nigeria, not just yourself. There's that plan has already been outlined. I think a few other things that we talked about on Tuesday as well was really around making sure that you reinvest, once you secure that environment and you make sure that it's attractive, then people will start to make investments in rebuilding the infrastructure that needs to be in place to stop the degradation and the crude theft. But you first need to implement that. Another thing that the Tinubu Shettima team have already pointed out is the need to implement the host community fund, because you need much needed development. There's much needed development that needs to occur in some of these communities. And so once people are productively engaged in different aspects of the economy and start to diversify and build wider capabilities outside of oil and gas, and have higher incomes, it's much more difficult to engage such people or recruit such people to crude theft.
The candidates that you speak for, the Tinubu Shettima team, they're a member of the APC that's been in governance for at least the past 7 close to 8 years.
Yeah.
And many of these plans that we've discussed for the past over half an hour were also shown in the plans of the Buhari or Shimbajo team. Now, the question Nigerians would have is, if the APC was unable to deliver on many of these items in the past 7 years, why would the APC be trusted to do it for another term?
So it depends on what they mean by delivery. So the Petroleum Industry Act was passed by this administration.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's correct.
It is a key enabler of investments, and it's an important framework and a key enabler of investments flows into that sector. It's not perfect, but it is a start, and it had been in circulation for close to 20 years before that. They made it happen and invested. And so what the Tinubu Shettima administration is saying that is for the things that have been delivered, they will implement, expand, improve upon, consult through consultative processes with the different stakeholders that it impacts. So can you trust them to deliver? Let me tell you what I would do if I, as an investor who spent a lot of time in the private sector and wants to see Nigeria go forward. I would first judge the content of what they've proposed. Will lower, if I deregulate power prices, will investments flow? If I deregulate gas prices, will investments flow to that? Are there benefits for Nigerians in terms of job creation, and when investments flow into various sectors and we start diversifying our economy, as you mentioned before, are there benefits for Nigerians, public sector outcomes in terms of our ability to generate income as a government to invest in education, in roads, in the physical infrastructure that these companies need to be able to for us to build broad-based prosperity for Nigerians? Then the next thing I'll go to is, does this candidate have the execution capacity? Does he have the ability to recruit talent that will help him deliver on these plans? Has he done so before? You make your call.
For those who are not fans, remember the campaigns. A lot of it is like marketing, right?
Yeah.
You know, there are people who don't know for whom to cast their vote. So this is like a convincing pitch, if you want.
Correct.
So tell us some of the things that these candidates did in Lagos, tangibly, that Nigerians can relate to and say, because of this and that, you can trust your vote to the Tinubu Shettima team. So
Lagos was crime-ridden when, in 1999. You couldn't really drive after a certain time. Armed robbery was, you had armed robbers operating in homes for 4 hours, 5 hours a night. People actually exited the country at that time. There was no infrastructure. You spent hours in traffic. I remember how long it used to take for me to get from Ikoyi to Chevron. You would spend hours. So the level of investment in infrastructure. So first, the investment and creative ways to build institutions that took people off the street and engaged them productively and made them part of the security apparatus to make sure that lives and property were secure, bolstered confidence from investors to say, you know what, if that's going to happen and I'm going to be able to bring talent in from different parts of the world to help me deliver and also help, attract Nigerians into this sector, because their safety is assured, that helps. So, and he did that. And Lagos is, we take it for granted now, and we've forgotten what it was like 20 years ago. Infrastructure, the level, you see bridges, you see roads, that's important to move people, to move products, to move services. That level of investment is not to be taken for granted. The amount of fiscal income that Lagos generates, its IGR, compare that to what it was 20 years ago. Could it be more? Maybe. But who else has done it?
Now, some have alleged, I hope you're able to disprove this, that tax in Lagos being generated is going to your candidate, the Tinubu, especially because he, as former governor, there been a lot of talk around, his money, there's so much money going to Tinubu and his family, including the Lekki toll gate, including tax, Can you tell us about this?
No, because I don't know how to respond to gossip. And things that are not substantiated, right? I don't know how to do that. I can talk to the issues. I can talk to the fact that I can see a correlation between the investments and the fiscal income that Lagos State generates. I see a correlation with investments in physical infrastructure, in healthcare systems. Go to Lagos State hospitals. Some of them are better than private labs in this country, right? So I can speak to the fact that there is evidence of investments and proper use. And you look at, they just commissioned a DPC port. I can see a correlation between fiscal income and investments in Lagos State. Let me be clear. If you're trying to elect pastors, you go to church. When we're talking about for a candidate, what I look for is competence. Can you do the work? I don't necessarily have to like you. I don't have to think that you're the best. You're most eloquent. You have to judge people on what they do. Have they delivered what they've said they've delivered before? make your call on that.
Would you like Nigerians who listen to you to divorce your candidates, Tinubu and Shettima, away from what many might term as the failures of the APC in the past 7 years? Or would you like them to regard this as a continuum and possibly a way to make over, or what might have been lost in the past 7 years?
So listen, I think not everything has gone right over the last 7 years, but there are some things that have gone right. I've talked about what happened in my sector. That PIA passing under this current administration is a big plus. So I would say that for where trust that for the things that have gone well on this administration, that there'll be an expansion and an improvement, and they're taking the feedback on things that you need to improve on. You don't score 100% in governance. It's not a chemistry test. So you do the best you can with the circumstances you're given, and that this administration will improve upon the things that went well and close the gaps that needs to be closed going forward.
I can't hold you accountable for what you are saying. You are not going to be the president, for God's sake. First, let's hear from your candidate, at least at the basic level of explanation. You are an energy expert. You almost sound believable.
Yes, the candidate did outline, and I'm actually just expatiating and providing details around what he said. So he outlined some of those points. He can't be on every radio station. He has to use his team to talk about different elements and the details of his plan. But these are his ideas, and also ideas of his team that he has taken on board.